There is a revolution in 2016, and it's not this one. It is a Hasbro revolution. In 2016, all will become one universe. The Hasbro comic universe. And they will all share it. All of IDW's Hasbro properties are uniting as one. Transformers, G.I. Joe, Micronauts, Mask, Rom the Space Knight, Action Man, even Gem in Distant Corners. It all becomes one. All but two things, however. First is Dungeons & Dragons, though we don't really care about that. The second is the most popular of all Hasbro's properties within IDW's corner. And I think you all know what it is. My Little Pony is not part of the revolution. And this normally would be a place where someone brings up a Tyrant Lestia joke, but really, that's hardly going to be appropriate. I mean, Optimus Prime's almost even more an absolute ruler, and he's hardly called a tyrant, usually. But why is this? Why can they fit robots, aliens, and alien robots, but not MLP to this series? The answer is most likely tone. MLP is not exactly known for being dramatic, at least in the comic series, and especially compared to the style and stuff in IDW's Transformers. You're not going to have betrayals and complicated stuff and loss of identity and things like that. Like Gem here, MLP is fairly comedic and lighthearted. In fact, that's part of the reason why Gem is not labeled under Revolution, despite being said by some to be within the IDW universe. You have Word of God saying it is and it isn't. This of itself is not so odd. MLP has always been somewhat separate from other Hasbro properties. Either back during the 80s when G1 versions of Transformers, G.I. Joe, and Gem were running around, while you had cues of them being in the same series at that point. For example, Old Snake here being Cobra Commander in the future of Transformers Season 3. You have never actually seen MLP stuff pop up of it. There were attempts to try and do that, but they all fell through, and thus you never saw any crossover between them, outside of a couple of comedic gags. For example, during the Gem comic, you happen to have this little cameo of Sunset Shimmer's pony form as a toy to be won at a fair. Not exactly a grinning crossover, but at least an awareness they do exist. Also some jokes from the movie versions, but I don't think anyone wants to acknowledge the fact. So if you want to take this as a grain of salt, or pretend it didn't actually happen, be free to. Of course, if this new crossover is set to be the status quo for the IDW comics, how long will this last? How long can MLP and the rest of the Hasbro series stay separate? It is like Star Wars and Marvel. A meeting between these two is only a matter of time, and no matter how it's done, you can't argue that it's going to happen one of these days. So let's speculate, shall we? How long before IDW's properties are joined by the ponies? And how might it be done? I have 3 theories myself, so you can listen to them and then give your own feedback and thoughts on it in the comments. I'm honestly interested to see how this would go, so let's begin. The most unlikely option, in my opinion, of the 3 ideas I have, is to have Equestria Girls universe be retconned to be the same universe that Optimus Prime and Snake Eyes are out and about on. Now, art is not necessarily the issue here. If you read comics, you'll be quite aware that art can vary widely between issues. Compare some issues and they look a lot more cartoony than other ones, and they can share the same universe. Case in point, Miss Marvel. I mean, how many series do you have things like this occurring in these days, especially in Marvel? This is not even the strangest bit. Yes, the strange, misty vision with strange flying objects and porcupines is not the oddest thing this series has. The issue is that so much has happened in the IDW universe even before this whole crossover stuff began that they have to explain it. They literally had to take an entire issue of the series to explain how Transformers stuff and G.I. Joe stuff can happen and not actually interrupt each other. I think we have to start getting to Sunset Satan and the Dazzlings and Midnight Sparkle will get really, really confusing. Plus, they have to explain how they'd react to this whole recent Optimus annexing the Earth thing. By the way, Optimus recently annexed the Earth. Don't think you heard about that. Yeah, this and other things would lead a lot of issues, like they had to explain how people do not freak out about having aliens show up repeatedly, despite the fact that in the same IDW universe, aliens show up and tend to kill billions of people. Okay, only once, but still. Anything killing 1 billion people is going to shock a lot of people. It might explain Venus Retch's car, but that only leads to more questions. The next option would be trying to connect the IDW Pony comics, without the human Equestrian Girls link, straight to the comics of IDW's Transformers, G.I. Joe, Micronauts, and etc. You do have alternate universes there in space, so you have the options, but that leads to its own problem. Like, has Equestria had to deal with the stuff that's going on in Hasbro space? I mean, Transformer Wars have devastated hundreds of worlds before Earth, and you have dive wraiths running around that Rom's trying to kill. Has that actually impacted MLP at all? Having to explain that's going to lead to some issues, especially if it does not come up in the show, as things tend to do. Because if Celestia can beat up dive wraiths but can't beat up changelings, that's going to lead a lot of flack. Like, you guys ever see Shinji and Ash's flack? That kind of flack. And Celestia does not really deserve that. They don't either, but that's not really the point here. Honestly, the continuity problems with the existing LP comics and the Transformers universe might make any try of fusion between them impossible. At least start doing some really strange retcons that no one really wants to see. So that's why my third theory is the one I think is most likely, and it's probably going to be the one that's also most annoying. But let me explain. Theory number 3. Any MLP stuff that appears in Revolution post-universe will be from an alternate universe, separate from the current show and IDW one. Reflections has established that these do exist, so that means you can tell a story with the characters, but not be bogged down necessarily by the same continuity. Such universes are not exactly uncommon. IDW is running Transformer and G.I. Joe runs that are based on its old stuff from Marvel, and not the current runs, separate from everything. This theoretical, Revolutionaries-compatible MLP universe will be like the Ultimate Universe, taking stuff that's already existed and remixing it a bit, allowing new readers to get into it, and being able to tell stories that you can't tell in the original continuity. Fans have shown an interest in darker universes, thanks to the cutie remark, though probably not this dark. Probably just more kind of less restricted by the show's young rating. They could tell stories they could never tell before, read ones that could just not happen in the normal continuity, like this lovely example of Megatron becoming an Autobot. Yes, that actually did happen in the IDW universe, and is still happening. Apparently Hasbro's MLP series is not the only one with the big bang. They can retell the origins of characters that they could not get into because of time restraints. They could even give origins of characters that they were just thrown in because of executive meddling and did not get as much time to do so, like Shining Armor, Cadence, Sunset Shimmer, and other such characters. They could even do relationship stuff that they can't actually get away from the show because of fear of more Guardians. I mean, you got stuff like that happening in all the IDW comics. Even Transformers relationships exist, and that's pretty much all male X-Men, no matter how you look at it. Plus, the entire thing just screams big event comic to me. If they need to get sales bolster of the series, they just have to have Celestia versus Optimus Prime, and that's going to sell at least a couple of thousand issues on its own. And once with this new universe, you could set up the ways they can meet that way. You could have Energon deposits on Equestria. You could have Direwave infiltrations. You have the Changelings be Direwraiths in disguise. There's just so many options to do with this new universe they can't do if they just retain the old one. They won't even need to get rid of the old one to do so. And this could even run even if the old show and comic get cancelled, which is always possible. So what is everyone's end thoughts? This is my first video, and I'm kind of curious how I did, how I can improve, and how this idea actually rings. Do you guys actually think of my ideas as decent? Do you have any of your own? And do you want to see this actually happen at all? I mean, there's some Transformers fans that really don't want to see this happening, and fans of us used to don't like all the stuff being tied to Transformers, so leave comments.